So welcome to the Wednesday, July 10th meeting of the Burlington Board of Electric Commission. My name's Elena Alexander. I'm the temporary board clerk for Burlington Electric Commission. The July meeting is the Burlington Electric Commission's organizational meeting, and the first order of business is to elect the officers. At this time, I'm going to open the floor for nominations for chair of the commission.
I nominate Scott Moody as chair of the commission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. By a show of hands, please indicate your support for Commissioner Moody. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Of the 5 members present, 4 votes were cast in support of Commissioner Moody. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I now turn the meeting over to the chair.
All right, thank you. Next order of business would be taking nominations for vice chair of the board. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Bethany Whitaker.
Do we have a second for that nomination?
I second it.
Nominated and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Nominated and seconded. All those in favor of Bethany Whitaker as vice chair of the board, raise your hand in confirming that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Commissioner Whitaker is vice chair of the board. Congratulations.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll open up nominations for clerk of the board.
Do we have clerks? Oh. I nominate Elena Alexander as clerk of the board.
We have a nomination of Elena. Do we have a second on that?
Seconded.
Nominated and second. Do we have any other nominations? Hearing none. Of Elena Alexander as clerk of the board, raise your hand, and say aye or aye. Combination 4, 5, 5, 4. None against. Congratulations, Elena. You are clerk of the board.
Thank you.
And so that leads us to the beginning of our meeting. Welcome all. This is the July meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Burlington Electric Commission. We meet every second Wednesday of the month at 5 o'clock here at 585 Pine Street. And as usual, all are welcome here. Come on down, jump into the conversation, bring your thoughts, concerns, praise, whatever is on your mind. Come on down and join us, or join us electronically. So that being said, I want to start off by welcoming our newest commissioner, Commissioner Hobbs. Michelle, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here. Looking forward to at least 3 years or so working with you and maybe helping working with the city. So thanks for volunteering and welcome aboard. Appreciate it. So on to our agenda here. The first item on the agenda is the agenda. Are there any changes or whatever to the agenda? Any additions, subtractions? No? Okay, good. The next item number 3 on our agenda is our minutes from the June 12th meeting. Barring any, if there are any clerical typos or anything like that can be sent to the clerk, but are there substantive changes to the minutes of June 12th? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept those minutes as presented.
I move to accept the minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Motion seconded. All in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
against, indicate by saying nay. 5 ayes, no nays. The minutes.
So do we have to abstain because it wasn't here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Suppose.
Yeah.
And Michelle too.
Oh.
Right. So, but the 3 of us, all right, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep. Though we still have a quorum.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
all right. So the minutes of June 12th pass. Item number 4 is public forum. This is a time for anyone who may be in the room. We don't have anybody in the room at the time, or anybody online. Do we have anybody online that would like to speak in public forum? Nobody. Again, we're here second Wednesday of the month, 585 Pine. This is the time, always welcome to hear comments from public ratepayers, whoever wants to come down and speak. All right, moving on to item number 5, Commissioners' Corner. This is a time for commissioners to pipe in about what might have been on their minds or what they've been over the last month that might have come up, or concerns or whatever. The floor is all yours.
I have one this week. This might be, this is related to a rate, and so I think the answer to this question might be because that's how it was designed, but it was about someone was asking me about this in my role as a commissioner about the variable rate for electric car charging, and this person was expressing that if outside of the designated hours, if you plug your car in for 1 minute by accident, you lose the rate for the month. And I was wondering, I guess my question is, has this come up before? Is there anything we can do about it in light of it being, a regulated process? And, if I have my facts straight on this.
Yeah, I would mention that it's definitely an issue that's come up. The way we've structured the current EV charging rate is very much kind of a static rate where if you charge during the off-peak hours only, you get the benefit, and then it resets on a monthly basis. So if you do register a charge during any of the quote-unquote potential peak hours, then you lose the credit, but you're not penalized, not like you pay more than the residential rate, you just pay the regular residential rate, but you lose the credit. We've definitely had a situation in particular with one charging company where there's been, through no fault of the user in some cases, a draw that registers as a charge, even if it wasn't scheduled for that, or even if the user hadn't set it up that way. So we've definitely been working with customers and with ChargePoint on that issue. On the kind of longer term, what we're interested in, and we haven't moved in this direction just yet, but we have some technology systems work to do, but we are interested in, is having it be much more dynamic so that we could say to a customer, you can charge anytime you want, you're going to get the benefit of the credit, and we're going to interrupt you with certain hours each month, and you'll have the option to override but then lose the benefit. That would be a much better system in a way, because we'd be able to have people charge more hours with the off-peak rate. We're not quite there yet. That's definitely part of kind of the long-term vision, but in the near term, we are definitely triaging on this. I know James, Emily, Mike have all spent a good amount of time, along with others, trying to work through solutions to it. But it's not a rate issue as much as a technology and user issue at the moment. I don't know if James has his hand up. He might want to add something.
Yeah, there was a quid pro quo, which was we do not have any form of penalty for on-peak charging. So in other words, there's no high rate for charging events on peak. We wanted to create a carrot-only rate. But we do not know when in a month the ISO peak hour will be, and we don't know until after the month is over when it's happened. So it's tough for us to not have a penalty but let people charge a little bit on peak. It could be the time that mattered the most. Though we do ignore truly de minimis charging amounts. So there is a threshold above which, and it's small, right? But I don't know that plugging in for a minute would put you above that threshold. What we really are catching is real charging events, right? But as Darren mentioned, frequently the problem has been the hardware is failing. And it is letting them charge during times where they had scheduled no charging to occur. So it is a rate design issue. We are looking to resolve it by moving to a more real-time interruptible rate. But the same problem that permits the charging to occur on peak also would preclude that charger from hearing from us that it wasn't supposed to charge. So we're having a little bit of a challenge with that charger company, and it's a big company. So
You're talking with a customer who's having this issue. It's sort of one thing if they charged on purpose during the peak window. That's correctable. Obviously, they can just not do that the next month, and they'll be good to go. And you should be able to set your vehicle as well as your charger to try to have an overlapping kind of protection. But if the charger, even though you've set the schedule correctly, still decides to charge when it's not supposed to, I think we're very much encouraging, I'm looking over here to make sure I'm right, that the customer contacts the vendor, right? The charging company vendor? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple things going on. There's that, and there's also us reaching out to that company
Right.
to see if there may be some ways to replace equipment.
Yeah, so I would encourage, if you know of somebody who's having this issue and they haven't reached out to us, to reach out to Mike and the customer care team, let us know about it. And we are trying to work with the vendor, but they may also need to work with the vendor to see about getting equipment replaced to be working correctly.
Great,
Yep.
thank you. Other commissioner items? Commissioner Vaughn? All right, we'll move on to item number 6, the general manager update with General Manager Springer.
Thank you very much. Before I jump into the update, I did want to mention a scheduling question for the commission to consider, which is we've typically had no August meeting. And happy to follow that tradition with a kind of moderate exception, which would be that we have some interest, if you all are interested, in having a joint TUC committee of the City Council and Commission meeting to be able to review and take feedback on 2 RFPs that we have drafted that would relate to, one relates to forestry and one relates to the future of McNeil. These were prescribed in the district heat resolution. Now that we're into fiscal 25, we have the funding available to be able to put those RFPs out. On one of them, there is a consultation process with TUC and the commission that's spelled out. On the other, there's not, but we'll still go through that process anyhow. So we were going to propose, if enough commissioners are available, on the evening of August 22nd at 5:30. We know that the TUC committee is available to join you, and we could host the meeting here just as we do for a regular commission meeting. And it wouldn't be a regular commission meeting. We wouldn't report on the financials or do any of the typical commissioner's corner or those items. It would simply be a joint meeting with the sole agenda item being reviewing these 2 RFPs, taking any feedback from the public and from the 2 bodies so that we can then move them forward.
That's a Thursday night.
Yes, at 5:30 was the proposed time, if that happens to work for at least a quorum of the commission, if not all commissioners.
Works for me.
Yep.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds good.
Yes,
Okay.
You'll have a full commission.
I will reach out to the TUC and try to coordinate on our end so that we can host it here. And with that, then we wouldn't have a meeting on the 14th. We would forego that meeting. We'd have this meeting on the 22nd, which would be a special meeting. Thank you.
I
That
would
was
still suggest that maybe look into seeing if that might be something to be covered.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to have town meeting TV.
And it might just be this, might be the same thing. You know,
Yep.
one for the other, it's a wash.
Yep. Thank you. That was a very efficient way of gathering that information, so I appreciate your allowing me to do that. In terms of some of the items in the report, I did want to share with the commission that we are actively beginning to consider future bonding, including future net zero revenue bond, tranche 2, which could be something that we would try to bring to the commission and to the city council sometime in the late summer, early fall timeframe, if we wanted to pursue something on the November ballot, which is potentially of interest. The current revenue bond is really scheduled to conclude in FY25. We're going to try to make sure it stretches for the duration of the year to support projects, but our anticipation is that we'll want to have some additional revenue bond available for net zero related and grid upgrade projects for FY26 and beyond. Last time we had the vote in December. It was a special election. Took until April to do the issuance. There's a lot of work that goes in, obviously, on the finance team side. There's a Moody's credit rating that happens in between, before we issue. So anticipating that if we had a similar time frame and we did a November vote, we'd be ready to potentially go forward prior to the end of the fiscal year and be ready for spending in FY26. So just want to put it on your radar. We'll come back with a more concrete proposal, of course, and be able to share that and update you all with that. But that's just something that I wanted you to be aware that we're looking at. In terms of additional meetings, the TUC is having a meeting on the 22nd. They're going to be looking at 2 things that are of relevance for us. One is how to improve the rental weatherization ordinance. We've had that in effect for a couple of years. There is a resolution that was sponsored to kind of look at ways that we can improve the compliance for that. We had predicted that there wouldn't be as quick an uptake as we had wanted because there's workforce issues, there's budgetary issues with the incentive programs. So we have a lot of buildings that need to go through that process, and not as many have gone through clearly as we would like to see, or I think the city and the community would like to see. So Jen Green, Chris Burns will be there, and they're going to represent us for that conversation. There's also some additional policy discussion around building emissions reductions policies that could come into play. And we're going to I think we're going to get hopefully some guidance on what research areas the TUC is interested in particular. And we have the Building Electrification Institute can help us with research. So we'll hopefully learn a little more about that. That's coming up on the 22nd. Since our last meeting, I believe, we had the great announcement with the mayor, some city and lake students, as well as Green Mountain Transit, the state of Vermont, V-Trans, and our colleagues at the Clean Transportation Coalition, Clean Cities, about the 5 new electric buses added to the Green Mountain Transit fleet with BED incentives. The good news is with these, plus the 2 that we currently have in the fleet, that's 10% of the fleet now is electric for Green Mountain Transit. These you'll charge in Burlington, so they're BED customer load. We'll work with them, obviously, to make sure we can charge off-peak. These are substantial vehicles. They can go 258 miles, I believe, on a charge. We're talking about batteries in the 500-plus kilowatt-hour range. I mean, that's substantial infrastructure there to be able to provide that transit service. So we're very excited about that. Those routes will run not only in Burlington, but throughout Chittenden County, routes to Montpelier. They can do pretty much all the routes that you would do. So we never know exactly where they'll be on a given day, but you'll see them. They've got the BED logo on the side from our support. And we were able to lower the incentive per bus a little bit from what we did in 2020 and still support them enough to get those in the fleet. So more to come there. I think we have more opportunity in partnership with Green Mountain Transit to electrify the buses. Wanted to mention in terms of credit card fees, which is not something that's part of our miscellaneous fee update, but we have had a practice dating, I think, to 2016 timeframe roughly, of absorbing the credit card fees from transactions through our payment vendor. The city itself and BED, as a part of that, as part of the FY25 budget process, was reviewing all of these things, and I believe the city has already moved away from covering those fees. We're planning to do the same, but not until September. We'll communicate, obviously, with customers around this. It really doesn't make sense to have all ratepayers absorbing the cost for certain customers using credit cards or debit cards when other customers are not. So as a matter of fairness, as well as, as part of our budget, essentially, we're going to be moving away from that in September. We'll communicate proactively. Want to keep the Net Zero Festival.
Quickly, is there any idea what that's cost over? What
It's around $300,000 a year now. It used to be $5,000 when we started. Wow. So you can see why it started off as being relatively small and not something that was as big a concern. And now it's a material, and we want to move away from that. Yeah.
Darren, will there be an ACH option or other thing for people to pay online, or?
There is, but I think there's a fee associated with that that's smaller than the credit card fee. Is that correct?
I'm not clear.
I thought there was an ACH fee, but it was a smaller fee than the credit card fee, if I remember correctly.
That's
We
when
can
you just
check.
pay from your bank?
Well,
That's
with a
how I-
debit card, I
Yeah.
think there was a fee
Oh, I
potentially.
see, with a
Maybe if you're doing a direct draw with a check or with a direct debit, that might be different. We can report back to you
Okay.
on that
Cheers,
one.
Thanks.
So we just wanted to keep the dates for the Net Zero Festival on the Commission's radar, the rain date and the main date, September 21, September 22. We closed on line of credit on the 25th, so we now have the full 10 million line of credit operational. The terms, I think, were more favorable even than the previous terms. We've updated Moody's about that, so that's a really positive financial development. And then last item, I joined with other utilities on a call with Senator Sanders about the Solar for All program, which was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. There's an opportunity to have essentially subsidized solar built in Vermont and have the benefits essentially flow through the utilities to low-income customers. So what we've talked about is if we're able to participate and whatever the benefit is, whatever the savings is, essentially from the solar, we can potentially use our energy assistance program as the vehicle through which to flow the benefits to customers who are already verified as being income qualified. So this may be something where we have some more work happening, I think, at the state level, federal level, to bring those resources into Vermont. We know Vermont's getting a significant resource. Senator Sanders is coordinating the effort among a variety of partners because he helped to bring the funding in. But I think we have an opportunity to really even bolster the energy assistance program offering if we're able to use this. So I'm excited about it. More to come because we definitely know the Public Service Department doesn't even have the federal funds yet. Once they get them, they'll work on rolling out the program, but I think we're well positioned to participate and help our customers there. That's everything I've got.
You mentioned a couple things about Moody's, and I'm wondering if, and I know we get reviewed by them every so often, and I didn't know at what point we're in that merry-go-round of
Yeah.
them reviewing us and giving us what our up-to-date rating is.
Yeah, it's typically post-audit. So I think last year it was in December that we got that. So audit usually closes in October, end of October. So I would assume roughly the same schedule, but it can vary year to year.
Darren, for Solar for All, can you say, is there a sense of the size of the budget that BED might get from that, or is it too early to kind of speculate?
Too early. What I expect is we would get a pro rata share of whatever the benefit flow is from the subsidized solar. So probably on a load basis is my guess. We would be 6% of the state roughly. I know they're bringing in, it was like, I think it was a $7 billion program nationally. I believe we're getting tens of millions, maybe 60 to 70 million if I'm remembering correctly. And there's 3 different tranches of category. There's subsidy for single-family homes who are income qualified to put in solar. There's a multifamily and rental property subsidized program. So both of those may apply in Burlington directly. And then there is what they're calling the community program, where they'll set up arrays that may be in Burlington, maybe outside of Burlington, and they'll flow essentially through a state process. And that's the part we would get the pro rata share of whatever that output is. And it'd be like we were able to sign up those energy assistance program customers for their pro rata share of what we're getting. And if it's at a below cost, essentially, subsidized program, there should be savings that materialize from that we can pass through.
So is that like a group net metering in a sense?
It is, but it's not net metered, but yeah, it's a similar concept in
Yeah.
a way. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
And then is there storage at all as part of that, or is it all for basically panels and stuff like that?
Storage didn't come up, so I don't know I think it's mostly for solar panels.
Yeah.
There could be projects that get selected that have storage as a component, but I'm not sure if they're eligible to subsidize the storage as part of that.
Got it, thanks.
Yep.
Other questions? All right. Moving on to item number 7 on our agenda, the May financials with Emily.
Good evening. I apologize. My Wi-Fi just decided to stop working, so I'm out of the meeting. So please bear with me a second while I try to get back in.
I don't know, it's up to the chair. Because public forum already happened.
What?
Okay, that seemed to have worked. Sorry about that. Brilliant. Okay. So May FY '24 financial results. We had a positive variance against the budget. We had a net income of $2 million compared to a budgeted net income of $1.47 million. So just over $500,000 better than budget. Reviewing in a little more detail from the top, sales to customers were $238,000 better than budget. Residential sales were up modestly by $48,000. Commercial sales were up $189,000, but I want to note that a substantial portion of that, $134,000, was due to a one-time billing adjustment. So sales were indeed better than budget, but not quite as dramatically as the actual results indicate. Other revenues, mostly EEU revenues this month, were a positive against budget by $107,000. And then rec revenues were unfavorable to budget. We've been forecasting this to be the case all throughout the year by $550,000 worse than budget. Moving down to operating expense, net power supply was favorable to budget by $700,000. Both fuel expense and purchase power were favorable to budget. McNeil was offline for the outage, so that caused a favorable fuel variance. And then purchase power was also under budget, mostly due to lower wind production compared to budget. And transmission was relatively on budget for the month. Operating expense had a quite small variance of $73,000, against a $1.7 million budget for that month. And other income and deductions, kind of moving down into non-operating income, were favorable by $78,000. That was due to higher interest income than budgeted, and we had some customer contributions offset by some losses on disposition of plant. So that's overall how we got to the positive variance of $526,000, combination of higher sales and better than budget net power supply, offset by the shortfall in the recs.
So that means you made up all the loss that was, because it seemed like January, all winter wasn't looking very good, and then this is all pretty much in the black. And it looks like a combination of lower cost.
Mm-hmm.
And revenues are still a little bit lower than expected, but that ground's been made up by lower expenses.
Yeah, that's basically right. So rec revenues, as you can see, are $1.5 million below budget for the year due to the lower than budgeted wind resource production and lower than budgeted McNeil production primarily. Net power supply expense, you can see for the year to date, so we have one more month to go here. This is May, right? But is better than budget by almost $500,000. Speaking to sort of grossly generalize, reason being that energy prices were relatively low this winter because the winter was relatively mild. We weren't running McNeil as much, right? But then the price we received, or the price we paid for that energy we needed, was also low, if you see what I mean. So we saved on fuel, but we paid more than budget for the ISO exchange, but what we paid for ISO exchange was relatively inexpensive because energy prices were low. Does that follow?
It does, generally, but I just feel like, and I wasn't here last month, but that we were seeing a lot of red previously, but it seems like most of that's been.
Yeah, we've been tracking, net income has been tracking better than budget for quite some time, actually. It's true that we had some months where it was worse than budget, but we also had more months that it was better than budget. So.
It's almost certainly end of year.
And
Yeah.
Emily, can I just add quickly too, of course, that the wind being below budget has helped us this fiscal year, but is going to roll into next fiscal year's budget, as we've mentioned before. So again, some of what's caused us to recover our position has been low wind production. That we'll have to deal with next budget year because of the timing on the recs.
Rec revenue in the next fiscal year.
But presumably you can budget for that. You're
We
anticipating.
budgeted for half of that. So there's a 6-month sort of delay between the production and then the recs that are available for sale. So when we did the FY25 budget, we knew the actual production through December 2023, and we could budget for the first half of this fiscal year. But we didn't know what the production would be for the first 6 months of 2024, so therefore the last 6 months of FY25, we may be off,
Okay.
right? If
Right.
we continue to trend low on the production side.
Right. We built in the variance we knew, But the changes you've seen since the beginning of the year are changes that we did not know when we did the FY25 budget. So,
FY24 budget.
no, the changes since the beginning of this year, we didn't reflect in the FY25 budget because we didn't have those variances yet. Like production variances in April, May, June of
Okay,
this year.
yep, I follow,
Okay.
yep. Any other questions before I,
So the only other question that I have is, so we're talking about a rate increase, right?
Mhm.
And that's separate from this, because it looks like if we're gonna finish the year $2.5 million in the black.
But we don't know that yet.
Okay, but it's May 30th, 31st,
Yeah,
right?
there will be one more month of data, so you
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
I mean, the variance that, year to date is relatively significant. The variance in a given month,
It's
you know,
not
could
so
be,
much,
could be
yeah.
less so. So, yeah, our hope and expectation certainly that we're ending with a positive net income, certainly in the seven-figure range. We don't know exactly what, but yes.
And you can say, because BED can save that money, right?
Well, so, that contributes to the year-end cash number,
Right.
right? Which will then roll into the starting cash for the next year, but it doesn't necessarily, we still need the rate increase to get to I think where you were getting to kind of essentially make sure that the budget pencils for FY25. So even if you have a little bit better starting point with cash maybe, which actually, even with the net income, I don't think we're necessarily projecting we're going to have an exactly corollary positive starting point with cash. I think we're going to be a little bit better than we had hoped to be, but not as much as certainly this indicates, because there's difference between the net income and the cash, as I've learned many, many times through our budgeting process. But the 5.5% that we have built in is to reflect the budget that we built for 25 with all of the different expenses and operational aspects, and to end that year with enough cash to keep us at the metrics that we want for Moody's as well. So there could come a point where this is significant enough on a kind of year-over-year basis, and the rate changes have compounded enough that the rate pressure would be, lower than it has been. Right now, it's kind of steady, I guess, from year to year.
And the
All of the
rate
things-
increases,
the thing I would add to that is, so if you think about our credit rating metrics and our financial credit rating metrics, the liquidity is one of the big ones, and the other one, as you know, is that adjusted debt service coverage ratio. That adjusted debt service coverage ratio, what matters heavily to it are operating revenues and operating expenses. So things that are down here and then other income like grants or Velco dividends, even if you have a great year in those categories, that doesn't help your adjusted debt service coverage ratio. So you really have to make sure that you're keeping operating revenues in line with your operating expenses to have enough leftover operating income to cover your debt in a healthy manner. That's what that metric is all about. So it is possible to have a really great net income, but if it sort of comes from the wrong place, it won't help your Moody's metric, if that follows.
yeah, and the rate case itself is a forward-looking document. So it's basically looking at the expenses and revenues projection for the coming year. Timing will help us a bit there because we had more data in May about the production of the wind, and so we were able to build the variance in the wind into the REC projections in the rate case through May, using actual data through May, whereas the FY25 budget would have had probably through February at latest. So again, but it's a forward look. We reflect changes that we know about at the last minute before we make the filing, such as production of wind and things like that. But this position doesn't change it that much. I think Emily's right on that.
I just think intuitively it felt more appropriate when clearly the kind of month to month was challenging. But now if it were in the black and, yeah. I think it's harder to make the case to taxpayers, maybe not to the utility commission, but yeah.
Yeah, and I would also say that, the rule of thumb that the Department of Public Service allows is that you have a net income that's twice what you pay in debt service. So the rule of thumb is not you break even and you, right, have a $0 net income. The rule of thumb is that you have a healthy net income that's sort of healthy enough at 2 times your debt service, your interest payment. Sorry, not your debt service, just your interest expense. So again, $3.5 million like looks very rich, right? But that needs to be seen in relation to what is our interest expense. And, just because there's a positive number there sort of doesn't mean that we are taking in more cash or taking in more revenues necessarily than we should. There is an expectation that we should have a net income to keep those Moody's metrics healthy.
We still prefer this to the red.
Yeah, of course,
mean,
of course, yeah. No, I'm just
happier to
thinking
see this.
because, property
Yeah.
taxes just went up again for Burlington residents, and then this is expensive to be here, so.
I definitely agree. And we do have the provision now through the legislation that was signed that if you can do a rate change that's 3% or less, it doesn't necessarily have to go through a fully litigated case, and it'll save staff time and resources. So you can be assured that if there is a possibility of getting to that for the next time around, we'll definitely aim towards it. And if not then the next year, like that's where we're aiming, is to be in that, that kind of range where we're 3% or less, and it's sort of at the inflation level. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but we're aiming in that direction.
And it's still sort of the legacy impact of not having a rate increase for so many years.
Absolutely.
That we're used to paying too low.
Right.
And because we didn't do like a rate increase, yeah.
Yeah, we're catching up, and there is a compounding effect, of course, to changing rates or not changing rates as your costs change. So, yeah, that's right.
Other questions?
Okay, I'll jump down to capital spending, which was in the month of May, $6.3 million. We didn't spend all of that in May. We cumulatively through the year, we reached 6.3. We had budgeted to spend 10.3 at this point in the year, so it's about 58% of the capital budget. And then moving down to May cash, we had operating cash of $7.8 million. That equates to 120 days cash on hand. Our debt service coverage ratio was 4.95, and our adjusted debt service coverage ratio was 1.56. And as I can also give you a preliminary update on where we ended June for cash, because as you'll remember, I've been expressing concern and that we've been monitoring that very closely. Preliminarily, we we believe that we've ended June around the same number, 7.8 million, which actually is close, very close to our budget projection. So I don't know how many days that equates to, because you have to have the operating expenses finalized in order to do the ratio for the number of days that represents. But pleased to have the cash position end up at least nominally on budget. And that's what I had.
Question on the capital budget. There's a bunch of notes in here. I'm wondering if you could just talk us through a little bit about why we're so, I think we talked about this last time too, but why so underspent relative to the capital budget?
Yeah, number of reasons. So production, you'll see the word timing in here a lot. Right, so production means our generation plants, Winooski 1, the gas turbine, and McNeil. There's a $640,000 number. I will confess that I don't exactly, I think that means that there's a large project that hasn't happened yet at McNeil of that magnitude, because I know the total McNeil capital budget is greater than that. And then the GT, we had planned to capitalize biodiesel conversion, and it turned out we didn't really need to make any capital investments or adjustments to the plant. So we sort of did a journal to book those transactions to expense instead. In other There's some R&D money that sometimes gets spent, sometimes doesn't get it spent. In terms of the EV chargers, we have ordered those, we've received them. We have run into some challenges in terms of siting them, just sort of taking more time to work with. We're working actively with Parks and Rec right now to put in a fast charger down at the waterfront, but engineering's been in kind of dialogue with Parks and Rec about where to put the charger and should the transformer be here or there, or, for months, right? So sometimes with these projects, there's just delays that are unforeseen in actually getting the installation done. And then with distribution, I would say the biggest challenge has been supply chain. Getting switches that we need, getting cable that we need, particularly getting transformers. There's a nationwide supply chain backlog of transformers. We have over $1 million worth of transformer orders sitting out there waiting for delivery. So that's one really big factor. Did that help?
It helped a lot, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Before we move on to item number 8 on our agenda, we did have a member of the public join us, Mr. Porter. If I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak if you want to take one.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks again for letting me sit in after missing a public comment period, and thank you for those commissioners that have some questions about the 100% renewability of Burlington Electric. As you heard that...
Before you go, just going to drive me crazy there. Thanks.
As you heard, Burlington Electric is 100% renewable on an annualized basis. McNeil is eligible for renewable, the RES, not because it meets the renewability definition, which is a harvest rate below natural regeneration rate, but because the PUC decided, based on lobbying, that McNeil and Rygate would be eligible because of the amount of money that those utility programs had already put into those plants. In their issuance, they said that they would need to look at the actual renewability of wood as it's defined in the statute. They asked their administration to look into that further, and then the ball was dropped and they never did. So I and others, including 12 state's attorneys throughout the country, feel that the REC system, the Renewable Energy Credit System, upon which we are claiming that we are 100% renewable, is deceptive. 12 attorney generals told the FTC that they felt it deceived ratepayers and deceived the general public, and I agree. We've been 100% renewable on paper with this 2 large caveats since 2014. I have changed my ways of doing things since 2014 because of the climate crisis, and I hope and believe that you probably have too. I now drive an electric car, I now have solar panels on my house, et cetera, et cetera. Since 2018, Burlington Electric has invested in no new clean energy systems, no new solar, no new wind. And I and others think it is time to move away from McNeil, which is the largest generator of greenhouse gases in the state, stationary source, to clean energy systems. I'm pleased to hear about this new renewable system, the plan that I read about in the agenda today. But I and others are asking you, the commission, one of who asked us to come and speak with you last year, last November, to take a careful look at both, not just the economics. McNeil loses millions of dollars and will do so again and again, but the environmental cost of McNeil. It is only renewable and only carbon-free based on a lot of loopholes, a lot of accounting tricks, and a lot of caveats. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. All right. On to item number 8 on our agenda, which is the 24-25 strategic direction. I'm guessing that might be Town Manager Springer.
Yes, and do all commissioners have the copy of the strategic direction in the packet?
Yep.
So very much an evolution, not a revolution, when we look at the document for 2024-2025. I know we did a lot of work collectively, the commission and the department, several years back to really shape this in a way that was forward-looking and durable for our vision. I think it remains so. That said, we have a few updates in here, and again, we always seek feedback from the broader BED team, so these updates are suggestions that we've received from different divisions to reflect their work. So obviously, I'll walk through the line item edits. The first and hopefully non-controversial edit is changing 2023-24 to 24-25, as you'll note. Within the next edit is on number 3 of the engage customers and community. And this was a suggestion from our equity project analyst, Ita. And the language here is just a little bit refined to encompass not just programs but services, some language about being fully accessible, some emphasis on all Burlingtonians receiving the benefits from net zero energy initiatives. So some edits proposed there. Next proposed edit is in the people, process, and technology section, number 2, adding cyber awareness, which has been a key focus for our team, and particularly our IT team has spent a lot of time working with the broader organization to raise cyber awareness through a variety of campaigns, and are doing so very successfully. So this reflects that work. We actually had received a prize from the Department of Energy. We're selected for a prize related to cybersecurity, which I think we shared with the commission, and some technical assistance associated with that. And then the last proposed edits are in the manage budget and risks responsibly. Number 3 speaks to strengthening internal policies and procedures as opposed to the current language, which we talked about ensure timely and diligent compliance. This is about strengthening internal policies and procedures to ensure timely and diligent compliance. And we added financial to the list of focus areas within that bullet. So that obviously comes from the finance team, as you might suspect. And then lastly, a bullet updating our cybersecurity bullet that was number 5. We changed the mitigate cybersecurity risks through awareness, assessment, policy, and best practices to the new language, strengthen cybersecurity by investing in advanced technologies, improving threat response processes, providing continuous staff training to protect our infrastructure and customer data. So a little more fulsome description of the work that's going on there. The rest of it we've reviewed, and it all remains relevant to our current work, and hopefully, as we've talked about in the past, this is a document. It's a one-page document, although it stretches the margins a little bit, that we post around the building, that we have on our website, that we hope every BEDer sees themselves in this document somewhere and can associate their work with the broader vision for Burlington and for the electric department. So we proposed those sets of changes and glad to discuss them or answer any questions.
I think this is great. And this might be not the right place to raise this, but this is a 2030 vision, so it's 2020. When's this going to get updated?
The 2030 vision?
Yeah.
Well, the 2030 vision is definitely kind of the North Star of trying to become
Right.
a net zero energy city, trying to keep chipping away at the emissions in the ground transportation and thermal sector. So certainly, as we get closer to 2030, if we continue to track, and if we decide as the commission, the department, the city, more broadly, to update our goals to reflect whatever the current thinking is relative to, getting to 2030, we certainly could. We're still sort of striving towards that. We think that striving towards that is the right direction, even if the time frame is incredibly ambitious. So it's still kind of a North Star for us, regardless of the time frame. But yeah, as we get closer, it could be worth revisiting.
Right.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I just have a sort of procedural question. So is this just like brought to the commission as sort of a, like, this is basically an BED guiding document, but it's brought to the commission to approve as sort of, just for our awareness and buy-in? Is there like a?
Well, but you can also suggest things if you feel like something's not reflected in here, or if you feel like there's language that needs, an update. We want to take the commission's feedback as well, if there's a feeling of that. So it's ultimately a document that is guiding document for BED in our work. We definitely have the commission vote on it every year, but doesn't mean that just because we've proposed these changes, you couldn't look at other suggestions as well.
Yeah, we had a big part of creating this back when it was originally drawn up.
Commissioner Herendeen wordsmithed quite a bit of, a lot of back and forth, if I remember correctly.
Now it's just sort of refining at this point.
And is it a connection to the strategic direction dashboard?
Yes, yeah, we try very much to align, with these goals and the dashboard.
Commissioner Bond, haven't heard much. I want to give you an opportunity to speak if you felt.
Thank you for the opportunity. I reviewed them and still, I think they look great and nothing of impact to comment.
Thank you. Is there suggested language for this?
Well, we weren't sure if there are any concerns or any proposed changes or areas that you wanted us to look into. We can certainly take that back, and you don't have to vote on it this evening. If commissioners are comfortable, given kind of we've done a lot of work on it in the past, you could certainly move to adopt it and then have a second and vote on it. So really the commission's prerogative. If we don't do it tonight, we probably wouldn't come back to it until September, given the August break.
Which pleasure?
I'm happy to vote now.
It makes sense to me.
Commissioner Bond? Laura? You there? I think she seemed, I think she already indicated that she was fine.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, then I seeing what the weather is here, about this, I'll entertain a motion.
Just as a point of order, is the motion to approve, what's the action that we're taking?
That's a good
It would be
question.
to approve.
Would be to approve.
As edited.
Got it, okay. Guess I'm
Did you
supposed to now make
Yeah,
that
you already
motion.
asked the questions.
That was just a general question. Okay, so yeah, I move to accept the edits on the strategic direction.
Motion, do I have a second? Motion and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed indicate by saying nay. 5 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right. What else we got here? All right, and I guess we have item number 9 on our agenda tonight is commissioners' check-in. So kind of one last round of thoughts and whatever anyone wants to bring up here at the end of this.
So I have a comment, sort of related to the
Commissioner
public
Bond.
comment that we received.
Sure.
And also thinking about the strategic vision. And and maybe this is not going to, there's no answer to this question, but with McNeil, it feels like, to me, that both sides are just digging in for like trench warfare a little bit, right? Or maybe that's not the right characterization, but is there a compromise or a way to kind of meet in the middle between what the pressure that we're getting on the commission and BED's getting about McNeil and thinking about the 2030 vision or maybe beyond that? Is it just like misperception about what right and wrong or different? I guess, and is there some way to say like, all right, we're gonna keep using McNeil for the useful life of the facility or whatever, and is it time to start to think about something else? And if we're thinking long-term, or are we just gonna keep kind of trying to, both sides making the case to do something different?
Yeah, no, thank you. We certainly don't have interest in anything relating to trench warfare or
I know,
anything
sorry,
like
I said
that.
that.
No,
but you know what I mean, like digging our heels
no,
in.
but no,
Yeah.
no, there's no interest in that. I mean, to me, The concept has always been that if there were, when we look at the carbon footprint for McNeil on a life cycle basis, it's certainly better than fossil fuels, and it's certainly not quite as good as wind, for example. I heard from the head of ISO New England recently at a Velco meeting about the efforts they're making to bring more offshore wind into the region, to connect with Canada and have more two-way directional flow of, hydro, which some people also oppose. So, there's no question in my mind that in the energy space, you will never satisfy every critic. There's just no way to do it, because there are people who oppose solar, there are people who oppose wind, people who oppose hydro, people who oppose wood, people who oppose nuclear, and certainly fossil fuels. And I'm with them on that last one for certain, and we don't use nuclear either. So the question is kind of how do we balance it responsibly? If we could be in a system where we could rely on wind and solar on the grid more than we do now, we're interested in that, we're open to that. What we found going out for new renewables or even existing renewables is not a lot of supply currently available in the region. There's a need to get more supply on board. So it's not really a binary McNeil decision. It's a broader regional question as to how do we get more renewables online. We supported H289, which was the legislation to update the renewable energy standard. We made commitments to say as our load grows, we're going to meet a big chunk of it with new renewables. We're going to put our dollars into that and try to really support the region in growing more wind and more solar. We've certainly had more solar come on to our system over the last 5 years. So I disagree with that statement that we don't have any new solar in Burlington. We certainly do. We also have renewed wind contracts. We've purchased hydro. So the idea that we're not constantly in the market trying to support renewables is not accurate. In terms of kind of the renewable system overall, everyone measures on an annual basis. There's no utility or state in the nation that I'm aware of that measures on a daily or a monthly basis at this point. When we get more storage, when we get more resiliency within the system and a whole bunch more wind and solar, I think we will eventually move to a system where the grid and the ISO exchange is not the battery. We actually have batteries that are the battery. So within all of that, to go back to your question, we're really interested in innovation at McNeil that improves the environmental footprint. I think that's where hopefully there could be consensus even among critics and those who might be proponents, and honestly a large swath of the community that's focused more on reliability and affordability and not on the individual economics of a particular plant. But that said, I think there are opportunities, and we're hoping that the study processes that are going to happen as part of the joint meeting that we'll kick off next month, we can look at ways like how can we have energy storage as part of the McNeil footprint? How do we build on the solar test center that's there? Are there ways that we could use that site more creatively? Obviously, are there ways to be more efficient? As part of the district heat resolution the council passed, wood chip dryer was something that they wanted to see. We did an RFP or an RFI. We received some responses back. We've budgeted within the FY25 budget to really try to formalize and go after an RFP and really try to bring in a potential system. So I would assume and hope that anyone who's concerned environmentally and doesn't want to rely more on fossil fuels would be interested in improving the footprint of that plant and using the site in a more innovative way. And that's very much where we want to be for the foreseeable future. And in the long run, hopefully the technologies come online enough that we can have the luxury of saying, oh, we might not need these types of resources, but that's not the near or medium term.
So that was a great answer. I'm kind of, to sum it up though, it sounds like that, yes, this idea that the portfolio is constantly changing and always trying to move towards something that's more renewable and more sustainable, and specifically to get McNeil to more efficient and more diverse.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it is, some people look at McNeil and they say, oh, the only emissions that count are the emissions at the stack. Right. Some people look at it and say, no, you have to look at a life cycle basis. Both of those folks should be able to agree that if we can reduce emissions at the stack, we should.
Right.
Because that means it's even more beneficial, regardless of which accounting system you want to use to look at it. So you will find us always interested in any measures that we can take that would improve efficiency, that would reduce the environmental footprint, that would cause a benefit from a climate standpoint. We're always interested in that. We have joint owners at the plant. We have other constraints that we have to work within. We have affordability and bonding capacity limits. But within that, we're very interested. And then at the same time, we have to be aware of the broader dynamics within the region and the system. And the one thing we don't want to do is go away from that type of resource and rely more on fossil fuels or nuclear. That's what this community has said time and again they don't want, and we don't want to move in that direction. So as long as our kind of forward progress involves more innovation, more renewables, better environmental footprint, I think we're on the same page, hopefully, as most people.
Jared, when it comes to the site of McNeil and talking about like the opportunity to develop, like obviously storage is a big factor in this, right? Because the big limit on, compared to hydro and biomass with wind and solar, that we don't have the production all the time when it's not windy or sunny.
Right.
So storage will be the next step there, but to do that at a scale that would support the city is sort of, I don't know that that's cost effective or possible right now. But thinking of sort of ways that the systems will evolve, like what is the available, like how much is there available land around the plant that BEDA owns or the city owns to develop something like that if there were, say, a storage, project in the foreseeable future?
Yeah, so the great thing about the site that I think about, and I think we started to kind of move in this direction with the Solar Test Center, is, okay, we're back. Is there's not a lot of sites within the city or even the state that are permitted existing sites that are connected to the transmission system, not just the distribution system, but the transmission system, where you can build projects. I mean, we know it's very hard to build anything energy related in the state of Vermont. It's not an easy process. Even if you're building solar, you go down to the southern part of the state, there are solar projects that are being vigorously opposed as being not good for the environment, not good for the landscape. You can read the articles and all of that. When we were building wind in Vermont, we got the same pushback. So the McNeil site is an existing site. It's permitted. It has a connection to the BED system, the GMP system, the Velco system. It's got, a 50 megawatt generation facility. It's got a little bit of solar now. So could you have storage there, and would it be useful? Absolutely. It won't balance out the city's needs, certainly at the scale that we would need. But what we want to do is have storage in Burlington to contribute to things like reducing peak needs. So if we're able to put in storage and deploy it when we have peaks, we're going to reduce the need in the region for some of the generators that have to come online that are more expensive, that may be more polluting during those peak periods. So we can contribute to the environmental benefits not only for Vermont, Burlington, but for the region by having that storage. McNeil's well situated from an electrical standpoint to host that type of infrastructure, and that's something we're interested in. So there's sort of the footprint at the plant, which you can improve through a variety of means, including the wood chip dryer. There's the broader site that's kind of interconnected in a good way. And there's things we can do, like storage, that would be beneficial in that regard. So I think, we don't want to be, we have local control of that site. We have local control of the, types of things that we want to do there. We don't want to, shut a facility like that and export our control to somebody at some natural gas plant somewhere else in New England, and then be at the mercy of them for whatever prices they and the market decide to charge. So let's use the site that we have. Let's use it in a way that's beneficial environmentally and economically, something we're very interested in.
Thanks.
Other questions? I think we lost Commissioner Bond.
I have one other comment if Laura's not there. This is totally different topic. So the packet's very helpful. It's rich in acronyms, and I'm reasonably good at acronyms, but I'm out of my depth a lot on this, and so I guess I would just throw out there a request to maybe, when possible, explain the acronym the first time it gets used in there. And then also I would just point out that it's a fine line between being really transparent and putting a lot of information out there, which we appreciate, and also being able to read and digest things to be able to participate meaningfully. And so that's my goal. So having better explanations will help. But also I think, some of the, I guess my thanks to the staff for taking the effort to do this. It's appreciated, but my also ask is to contextualize, because sometimes I read something and I'm like, is that good or bad? Right? I don't know, because I don't sort of work in the industry every day. So that's just, and I don't mean it, I mean it sort of in a constructive way so that we can participate more fully and be, in our role and be helpful. So that's just my 2 cents, which I just wanted to throw out there.
Received.
Yeah.
Our
Mike
team
Kanderek looks resistant to this, but everyone else.
noted for the minutes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah,
Understood.
I appreciate all the work that must go into this, so I don't mean it in any way as a.
No, it's a fair point. I mean, we can get we're enthusiastic about some of the things, and we also live in it every day. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the point about the acronyms and the alphabet soup of different things. And then also, sometimes it's harder in a way to boil down to the essentials than to give all the information. So we'll do our best when we can to boil it down to the key essentials.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Other comments, questions? Okay, we come to pretty much the end of our meeting. Again, I want to welcome Commissioner Hobbs. Thank you for joining in, and thank you for bringing in your civic duty. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.